I'm Mark Baer. You're watching the YourTown television program. I'm with Steve Zmak, photographer. Welcome.
Thanks, Mark.
And also host of West Coast Focus, and producer.
Right.
So I've got all the hats on.
Yes.
So first of all, let's talk about life as a photographer. We're going to break this into commercial photography and fine art. Let's start with fine art.
Okay. So yeah, fine art I like to do, in the footsteps of Ansel Adams, black and white, landscape and nature. I grew up, my dad collects black and white photography, so I grew up with Ansel Adams, John Sexton, and
Where did you grow up?
This is in Huntington Beach. I've lived all over the California coast, but yeah, in Huntington Beach. And so walking by those photos every day thinking, wow, someday I want to take photos like that, but didn't even, know what was between point A and point B. I was just having fun in yearbook staff, taking photos of my friends.
Oh, great. So this started early.
Yeah.
And then where did you go to school? How did it develop?
Well, yearbook through junior high and high school, and then in college, just becoming a freelance photographer. And then sort of, I wanted to go into film and video production. Got accepted, the internship I got accepted one summer was accidentally misfiled, and it was for doing promotions for a nightclub. And that's how I kind of got into graphic design, and then brought my photography with me along the way, and set off on a career in graphic design, and just used the photography as a graphic design tool.
So it's part of your toolkit.
Yeah, right.
So what a gift now, looking back. So having a graphic design background, what did that bring to photography?
Oh, well, huge. You guys were talking with Shelby about the business side of art. Well, being a graphic designer and experience in public relations, it's great for marketing and promoting yourself. I don't have to go get a graphic designer to build my website or to design my logo or my stationery and my brochures and stuff like that. I can do it all myself.
And then how did you kind of get out of that more into, into more dedication to fine art and everything else?
It was moving up here from San Diego. I got a job as the in-house graphic designer and photographer for Cal State Monterey Bay when they first opened in '96. And so when I got up here, I realized, wow, I'm right in the middle of Ansel Adams country. And I was just so surrounded by it. It's like, now I understand, now I know where to go to start creating the photography that I've always admired.
And then before we move on, and let's talk about the commercial hat you also wear with commercial photography.
Yeah, so I shoot commercially. I do everything except weddings. I do a lot of event photography, but weddings is a whole kind of specialized thing, and I leave that to the people who really enjoy it. So I do a lot of event coverage, aerial photography, and I'm licensed for drone photography and video, and aerial photography is my favorite. I mean, you think we live in a scenic place, seeing it from the ground. Get up in the air, and it's just mind-blowing.
So let's talk about the development of that process, because it's more than just putting a camera on a drone. How do you keep your integrity as an artist with this new process, because it must be complex?
It is, but it just comes down to it's a different kind of camera in the camera bag, but another tool in the kit. And so the first challenge was just learning how to fly the thing and getting it to where I wanted it to, and I'd shoot a lot of video. I just flip the video camera on, record the whole flight, and then watching afterwards, learning what I was doing right, wrong, what I could have been doing better. And once I had that down, then I could move into still photography. And it really is, it's a tripod in the sky. So you get it up there, you're looking at it, let's move it back some, let's move it up some, let's move it down.
And one of the things that strikes me about looking, I know your fine art work more than I know your commercial work, but in the fine art work, especially in nature, what strikes me is you seem to have a lot of patience waiting for the shot. It seems like you'll go and you'll wait for something. It doesn't feel like you just got there, took the shot, and left.
Sometimes I get lucky.
Yeah.
But I often think of how much of my life is spent just waiting for the next big wave to come.
And how important is that?
It's for, that one wave that washes perfectly all the way up the beach onto the stones you want it to, but it may only come every 20 minutes. And And even when it done, it didn't wash over the stones the way it did the last time when I was just getting the camera set up. And so yeah, a lot of time just waiting for the wave.
How important is wait is knowing to wait pays off? I mean, it's got to be kind of part of your psyche as an artist.
Well, it's also it's the pleasure of doing it. It's being in this natural environment that's so pretty, and you know, you just lose yourself out there. So while I say, like, you know, waiting for the next wave, I'm not really suffering out there. I'm really enjoying it, watching every wave break.
And what the camera brings, what I've learned from several photographers, is it makes you look. You're always you're in an intense state of alertness, and imagining, you know, your own eyes become the camera eyes, and you're really examining, and you're looking for, you know, you have the pleasure of the medium of the camera to focus your own vision and really make you look at things.
That is, and in photography, we call that scene. You know, anybody can, you know, look at something, but are you really seeing it?
Yeah. And how did that develop over time with you, your sharpness of that?
Well, you know, looking at a lot of other people's photography. You know, you were talking earlier in an interview with Shelby of like learning, like studying the work of other artists and knowing, like, how did they do that? And then you putting that technique into your tool bag and pulling it out at the appropriate moment and applying it to your own artwork.
So this brings us to, I believe, great art places, locations, destinations, where that become a photographer mecca or an art mecca. A lot of it has to do with artists talking to artists and collaborating with artists and having the conversation and the inside the circle kind of therapy of this discussion. And you're with your show West Coast Focus, you're a big proponent of this conversation and a cheerleader for the photography community. And how did that come about?
Well, so, you know, the West Coast genre of photography and internationally recognized. There are only, you know, few real genres of artistic photography, and the West Coast School is one of them, and it was founded right here in the 1930s in Carmel. And now the photographers, we're in our fourth and fifth generation of photographers beyond that, started by Edward Weston, Ansel Adams, Imogen Cunningham. And so there are so many, there's several photography clubs in the area. So you talk about community, and you go within these groups that are safe environments to show new work and experimental work and get an honest critique from people, you know, in a friendly, nurturing place. So the art community here is fantastic. The photography community here is rich, and that's what my show takes advantage of. It just pulls the curtain back and shows everybody outside the photography community of what a great place this is, and a historic place.
Now, one thing I think is very exciting that you told me yesterday is you're going to take the show to the Center for Photographic Arts.
Right.
And that's a great space. That's been a great space.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little
bit.
bit.
It's a wonderful photography gallery, and 2 months ago I shot an interview with Roman Lawrence there, who is doing an exhibit there, and we used his exhibit as the backdrop to his interview. And the lighting in there for studio work is just, it's so great. And it really is. The Center for Photographic Art is at the heart of our photography community. A photographer comes into town, and that's the clubhouse that they check into to get connected to everything else in the community. So being able to shoot one of our full productions there, we'll take the whole show right out of the AMP studio and do the setup in the CPA gallery, and we're going to add a small live studio audience, which we've never had before.
Nice,
and
nice.
Really just, we're always constantly adding and improving things to the show, just in small building blocks. You know?
And boy, it's such a, you know, again, making a living as a photographer is not easy. You know, you have to be good at the business. You have to cultivate an audience. You have to cultivate an audience of the value of art, you know, photography, and especially in an age when everybody's got a phone.
Everyone's a photographer now.
Everybody's a photographer. And
right.
It's somehow now what delineates everybody's with a phone.
I mean, it was competitive. It was a competitive business before, you know, smartphones came out, and it's really competitive now. but it's the people that stick with it. I think really the top 10% of photography talent could make it as a professional photographer. But it is, as Shelby was saying, it's more than just the talent. There's the business side of it, and you're always working at it. So you really have to enjoy your art and putting it out there, because you're really doing it 7 days a week.
Yeah. And if you're not, someone else is.
Someone else is, yeah.
Right.
Someone else is going to get that gallery space. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about the show a little bit more in terms of how many photographs you put on.
Yeah.
How did you conceive this, and
well,
talk about this a bit.
I was as a teenager with MTV coming out on cable television, and I'd spend my summer sitting mindlessly in front of music video after music video, music and visuals, and I thought, wow, if I just did that put our great still photography with some great music, and I've got a local composer, Bill Specht in Pacific Grove, does original music for every show, and put those two things together, and I could, again, I'll sit there mindlessly with a big smile on my face watching photos to great music. So we've got so many great photographers in the area, let's hear their stories. And I found even my friends as photographers, guys I've been going out shooting with for years, it wasn't until I invited them on the show and they turn in all their photos and their bio that I never knew this about you, and I've known you all this time. So really, there's a lot to learn about our photographers here, very interesting stuff. So bringing that, and there's no shortage. I'm never going to run out of material. I've only repeated one guest so far in 14 shows, so almost 50 guests and only one repeat so far, and I still have a long list of local photographers that I want to get on and expose.
And let's have a time for a shout out for our Arts Council.
Yeah, right.
Which is helping you.
Right. So the production of the show is funded through a grant from the Arts Council for Monterey County. So they're funding all my 2018 productions right now.
Yeah. So good for them.
Yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Again, having an art conversation and spotlighting the arts of a community, it really brings value. I think people want to live, young people I know want to live in a place that has a strong arts community. It's good for the community. I think it must be difficult in a way being a photographer here, because you're looking out, everything looks like a postcard. How do you get beyond the postcardiness of our area to see something new, because it's also beautiful?
Well, you accept the postcardiness,
yeah.
And you do take those photos as well, because they always have an audience.
Yes.
And the photos that I post on social media, those postcard photos are the ones that get the most attention. But for me, I walk into a grand landscape scene, let's say Point Lobos, and my first few trips there, you got to shoot the grand landscape, because it's so overwhelming that you're blind to any of the details. Yeah. But once you've got that out of your system, now you can go looking for the special shots.
And it takes time.
Yeah, and it's going back and really becoming intimate with the location.
Let's talk about the image makers a little bit, because wow, there's some talent.
Yeah, we're at over 70 members now. Yeah. It started with 6 people, 6 friends, showing each other's prints in a living room in 1996.
So this is a long storied.
Yeah, so Richard Garrett, one of those great photographers that shot back in the 50s here in Carmel, and was the Director of Development for the city of Monterey for over 30 years as well. But a great photographer, very influential, big into community, and so invited 5 friends over for like a living room salon, and that was 96. I was brought into the club in 2004, and I was around the 40th member. And we've got over 70 members now. And it's all fine art. It's all fine art photography.
Do you have to be kind of inducted in? It's not like you can. Is there a judging committee? How does it work to be?
There is. We have a steering committee that runs the whole show, and people apply to come in, and they come to the meetings as a guest, and maybe show their photos 3 times at 3 different meetings. And then their application is reviewed by the steering committee, and they're admitted into the group.
Well, I've known several of the, Tracy Ballou, Huntington Witherall, Jeffrey Beckham, Eduardo Fuji.
Yep.
it's just the talent goes on and on and on there.
Yeah, the pool is deep, and that's why I'll never run out of guests for my show.
Yeah, and so and you probably learn something every time you do this. I mean, there's a lot. It's lovely to be helpful to the community, but there's probably a lot in it for you doing this because you focus. And the interesting thing about doing these conversations like this is the camera really focuses the mind. Mm-hmm. People will tell you things online or on camera that they would never tell you. It just wouldn't come up. Conversations aren't structured to be that focused. Mm-hmm. So they want to bring their game, and they'll share what they do, and you'll always be learning a lot. And I'm sure that's been your experience.
And every guest submits around 35 of their photos to me, and we show over 100 photos in every 1 hour episode. So it's not just a bunch of talking heads. We see a lot of the artists' work in it. And really in a quantity that would rival a single exhibit of theirs.
So let's, in the last bits of this, I want to kind of talk about your own personal development as a photographer. Do you feel yourself, do you feel your eye getting sharper? Do you feel your discernment getting more refined as you go?
I do, but a lot of times it's an uphill struggle. Like you arrive at Yosemite and it's beautiful and it's going off, and I just like, what do I point my camera at? It's almost like information overload, and so it doesn't always work. But yeah, I do think I'm growing as an artist, and I've again the supportive photographers around me whose opinion I trust. Are telling me that I'm growing as an artist, and they're specifically telling me how I'm growing as an artist and what they think I ought to continue pursuing and maybe let this other stuff go. And so I'm always getting that kind of really good positive feedback from the photography community.
Yeah, and it's just so many interesting, now you have so many different mediums you can put imagery on.
Right.
I look at metal, and I go, wow, that looks cool. Or glass images on glass. I mean, I love the kind of the framing presentation part of it as much as the image sometimes. So it's we live in interesting times, and
now I'm putting my photos on clothing.
There you go.
And throw pillows and smartphone cases.
That's cool. That's great. So anyway, we are out of time. I'm Mark Baer. My guest has been Steve Zmak, West Coast Focus photographer, fine art photographer. You can find him online. Let's give the website one time before we get out of here.
SteveZmak.com.
And spell your name because they know.
ZMAK.
ZMAK. Okay. My pleasure.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.